Hi,
Hello.
how are you, Dirk?
Getting better.
Nice to hear.
I'm a bit behind on things. I don't know. See if I can find out what happened.
No worries. I think this meeting will be very important because I gather some feedback from people at KubeCon, and basically they said that everything what we prepared in proposal B and D is overcomplicated. So today it's gonna be an interesting discussion about the next steps because I plan to create a new proposals and simplify things very much. So yeah. Hi, Brand.
And simpler sounds better for now. We can
Sorry.
always make it more. We can always make it more complicated.
Yeah. But my point would be basically that we don't bring any.
So A is out. Do I get that correctly, or A is still in?
A is still in, E is still in, B and D, I would say we would have to discuss. But from this, what I heard around, basically, it cannot go under OCI in this shape. I mean, that's the perspective I have. So I'm going to work on proposal F, which is new proposal, a very simple one that basically that would be the best if we can come up with, for example, a known artifact type and have some kind of media types as suggested by Brandon on the last meeting. That could work if we bring our own tools which are not under OCI, because each of our implementation is very opinionated, the way how we do stuff, and we cannot come up and agree in the group about some common solution. For instance, Vanessa wants to bring something that will fit Flux framework scheduler, which is designed for HPC. We have different use cases as telco and edge devices to check if node is valid or not. So I thought that basically we could come up with a known artifact type for compatibility, known media types to know what to expect in there, and provide different implementations like HPC based or edge devices or telco based if it's required, that solves specific use cases. But it means it's not going to be under OCI. Under OCI, it's going to be just notation that maybe some references to these projects, something like that. But I will repeat all of this what I told you to everybody. So, hi Vanessa.
Cannot hear you.
No, I was going through that thing again where I was like, it's muted, but then it said the host. You have to agree in the top, and it's like the tiny bar. But I knew what to do this time. I looked for the bar, saw the bar, clicked the button, and then boom, freedom.
Cool.
Awesome.
Let's
welcome to the freedom side.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a very arduous journey of clicking a button, and yeah. Welcome back from KubeCon. Have you all turned into gophers? Anyone?
Sorry. KubeCon was great. It was fun to talk to all these people.
Yeah, I forget that like people are actually people. I think you're just like little talking heads on the screen.
Okay, so I was out for the last 6 weeks, unfortunately, so I'm quite a bit behind. So Marcin, if you want to maybe share your feedback from KubeCon, then we could start, I guess.
Yeah. Yes, so let's start. Basically, what people told me that proposal A and E is quite good for them because it's simple and quite flexible. However, that doesn't solve all the use cases, and they are quite open to about this artifact idea. However, they don't like the way how it was proposed in proposal B and D. In the proposal B, they specifically said that this graph specification and new specification is too complex, and they don't follow the idea inside in there to come up with new spec that basically they have today NFD, so they don't see any reason why we would bring this such a thing, because later they have to write some converters from OCI generic stuff to other things. From proposal D, there was opinion that it's hard to follow schemas from different organizations if it's required, and also
It's not required.
yeah, even if it's not required, that it's fine. And there was also what they said, this scheduling that is basically for flex scheduler, right? This use case, which it's kind of opinionated as well. Basically both.
Not necessarily. I think that the use case for me, the original way I designed it was for Kubernetes, because I actually designed, well, we have a Kubernetes custom scheduler plugin, and I do more work on Kubernetes scheduling than I do on Flux scheduling, which is kind of ironic, but
it's still custom, right? It's not something that will work out of the box in that case.
So it's a scheduler plugin, so it uses the Kubernetes 6 scheduler plugins, which is the only way that you can customize the scheduler. You can make operators like Q will take a job and then actually put the suspend label on it, and then it tries to kind of control the order at which it gives it to the scheduler, but that's still not controlling the scheduler. You're still up to kind of like the jurisdiction of the scheduler, and then the kubelet that can like be like, nope, not going to accept this, you know, get out. So there's multiple layers.
And one more thing they didn't like about both of them is that the way how you provide those plugin stuff, because in their mindset, at least from Kubernetes point of view, NFD provides everything. And if you want to provide something, then you should basically invest in NFD, NRI, because there are a lot of investment in those two projects to come up with some compatibility aspects and node feature discovery stuff like that. So
what would be their proposal with node feature discovery? Because that's going to give us metadata about the nodes. But what are they proposing that what kind of workflow are they proposing? Because I'm not seeing the connection between what we're working on and then node feature discovery. Aside from like, yes, there's metadata somewhere in Kubernetes that's useful.
Yeah. So they don't have any suggestion about the workflow. They just represented what they don't like about us. That's fun.
Oh, excellent. Well, yeah, that's there's opinions on the internet, and they don't like it, and no suggestions. Yeah, we can work with that. I'm just kidding. Sorry, continue.
So basically, what I thought is to release under OCI a known artifact type, which is image compatibility, and provide media types as Brandon suggested last time, if I got your Brandon idea correctly, that we could have media type NFD, and we would expect in this blob of this media type that you have NFD labels in there or something similar to that matches to NFD. We don't provide any spec, and we build our own tools around that we don't release any tool under OCI, because as also spoke with some guys, our implementations are very opinionated to our own problems, and looking how we discuss all of this stuff over the meetings, looks like we cannot find a common ground about the scope and how it should work. So for me, that makes sense that we create common types that are known under OCI to know what we expect in these blobs, and all the other toolings should be provided by telco edge telco edge devices, environments, and maybe HPC, like a standalone tools to fulfill our needs. We just need to come up basically with some known types to know what to expect, and that's all.
Yeah, I guess I thought that's what we were doing. Like at least most of my prototyping of plugins is that I want to be able to take one of these artifact definitions and prove to myself it works for what I need in very kind of simple, dumb use cases. So I did image selection and I did scheduling, and I was happy with both. And really the artifact for me comes down to like a list of metadata annotations. And it's nice that they have an ability to be namespace or maintained by communities, because I watched the video for KubeCon and I really do like the idea of having, for example, a NFD namespace artifact that is specifically for Kubernetes that goes into the scheduling in some way. I do think, I guess the point where I disagree with some of the feedback is I do think there needs to at least be the option for extending an artifact to include more metadata about something. And that for me is the schemas. Like totally not required. 80% maybe of these artifacts won't have a schema because there's no complexity beyond these flat labels. But for those advanced use cases where it's really going to empower like entire communities to do what they need to do, putting in one more, I mean, I guess if you think about it though, technically speaking, that particular, schema URL could in and of itself just be another metadata annotation. You could just know to look for that particular one. It kind of makes it a little bit different to call it a schema, but that would be something that I think I would be happy with for the HPC community. So anyway, I like the suggestion of just focusing on the artifact. Simple, get it out the door, and then build a crap ton of stuff with it. Can I say crap in this meeting? Is that a bad word?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be the idea, and because we also have some use cases that will not go as because you want this schema, right? So I thought you could just use annotations that comes up with blobs, and for our own use case, even people don't like these relations. We still see some use cases will not pass without that in telco environment. So we want to bring this somehow as well, and it's gonna be opinionated by specific implementation. In that case, our sorry, I lost thread. I just was reading chat. Yeah, so what I was saying is that we have still something around the artifact, like our own use cases, right? So we plan to use either our own internal media type, which is basically the compatibility relations to express a graph there, or use annotations. So if you have, Vanessa, some specific cases with the schema stuff, then you can use annotations as well, or internal media type that is understandable by your tool. And basically, yeah, I wonder, Brandon, if we can announce some kind of known artifact type under OCI documentation and media types as well, and have a reference to our own implementations. Like, for example, I would see the section there, compatibility stuff, because I saw there are implementations MD. There is implementations MD file with list of tools. So I thought even we don't have a specification for compatibility, which is basically not needed right now, we would have still some references to HPC tool and maybe a telco tool, that those are the tools that basically solve compatibility to some extent.
Yeah, I think we've been good in OCI about letting other groups implement their own things, and then we just link off to them and say, here's where this other project is. And as long as they're following the specs, we're usually pretty good about that. I am thinking about when we get into like NFD and stuff like that, instead of us being in our own world over here saying, okay, let's implement an NFD spec and how we can implement that and integrate everything. Instead of doing it here, go over there, go over to the NFD group and say, hey, how can we implement this inside of an OCI registry and store this metadata with a container image, and get more involvement from those individual groups that we're trying to work directly with.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I already opened the issue on the board and I added their metadata to my tool. But I do like the idea of better trying to figure out. I think the question at the end of the day is, how does that entire where does the metadata like need to be? Needs to be in the scheduler, for the most part. And then how does it get there? And then based on how does it get there, work backwards and figure out where it needs to be in the first place, what tools to build, et cetera, et cetera. I think as long as they agree that it's something that they want to get into the scheduler in some way, then there will be a discussion to have. But if they don't, that's kind of the deciding point in my mind.
I spoke with. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So from my limited understanding of the node feature discovery is that this is just declaring attributes that a specific node has, right? So, but we want to do the opposite, right? So we want to declare which compatibility a particular image is requiring, right? And that can be one-to-one, but it can also be a more complex relationship between the two, right? So for example, NFD provides a kernel version, and the container image could say, we can work with version 6 or with version 5 above some minor version or something like that, right? So a complex Boolean dependency. That's not in scope as far as I see from the node feature discovery spec. So we would have to do something on our own that builds on top of the labeling or the structure that the node feature discovery is providing.
We spoke about that with Joe. Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like we're saying we need a way to pass in the selectors and whatnot for the scheduler to know. And so we're seeding that data from the image instead of forcing the user to provide that for everything they're deploying.
No, I see what you're saying. So there's a match going on, right? There's an environment and then there's the container. And NFD is going to provide the metadata for the environment. Here is what this node offers. And what Dirk is saying is like, okay, but what about the container that's coming in that needs to be matched? What metadata, like, because you're not going to run NFD for a container, I guess. Like, how would that work? You'd have to basically have it set up so that it was inside of the container as an environment, and then try to match labels that way. I don't know if that's possible. Maybe that would be possible. That would be the easiest way to match, but otherwise you're going to have to make a mapping between probably two different namespaces. Okay, platform. What do we have for platform? I mean, that's the stupid one, right? Something more interesting. Something about I don't know.
Kernel version is
kernel versions, yeah. Like yeah. What metadata attribute do we use to get something about kernel versions of the container? And then what does that look like in NFD? So that's a discussion. I think that's probably scoped under discussion to have with the NFD maintainers, because arguably they're doing something like that for something else right now, and we just don't know what it is. Go ahead, Marcin.
So from our discussion earlier with Joe, how to solve this issue, we thought to give an example with kernel version, you still use the same key, but you basically use different values. So on the container side, you specify the key, and as a value, you place a range. And it's tool responsibility to match appropriate key to values if it's in the range on the node side. Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be just ranges. It could be also like more complex operations, like Boolean operations, like it's either equal to that number or equal to that number.
Yeah.
Or that
yes.
And something else also.
So you would have to come up basically with some small, like maybe not the language is to say too much to say, but some operators that would allow you to define all of this stuff, and it would be always on the value side, not on the key side. So
yeah, exactly.
So it's quite
well to be debated too. Actually, it could be combining multiple keys also, right? So you could say either the node provides IOMMU or I need kernel version 6 at least, or something like that. I don't know.
That's correct, but it's a different abstraction, I would say, because you would have to somehow define this kind of relation. So how you connect keys is one of our problem in telco, and we want to come up with these relations over graph or over tags, because we thought how this artifact could look like already. So if you, for example, bring a multiple media types of NFD, you can combine them somehow over tags or something like that. I can express a little bit more when I have a working prototype, but there are ways of doing this. Go ahead, Brandon.
How do end users today use NFD? Are they putting a selector on their deployment that keys off of those annotations and whatnot? So if they're doing that today, does that give us the ability to say, here's the selectors that we recommend for this image, and just package that up as an artifact?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Basically, Exactly, they are using selectors for already existing labels, so they come up with their own pod specification and use whatever NFD is reporting.
Yeah, I plus one that my impression that it's a very manual process in the sense that you look at the labels and you manually add that selector. I would argue that is a little too manual. I would argue we'd want to be able to discover something from the container and then have a tool automatically apply those labels. And so the user would have to think less about that in the most case, and for the most part. And also I'll mention that for my prototype, I did have that problem where I had extractor plugins, and then I had, the images or the artifacts that I wanted to populate for the images. And I basically needed to make a mapping. I said, okay, this extractor field, I'm going to put into this compatibility metadata attribute. So yeah, unless you have the same extractor that maps into an exact attribute, which would be ideal, I think, you probably have to do something like that. Go ahead, Brandon.
If you're building an image, though, particularly if you're building multiple platforms of the same image, multiple implementations, I would think that manual process you would know as the image builder that says, I'm creating this image that's designed to run on this specific set of hardware that's different from the other image that is built. So as much as it might be a manual process, it might not be so bad having it manual.
No. Like if you're building images and you're automating it, and there's no way in heck that I want to manually. I built so many freaking containers, and there's no way in heck that I want to have to do that manually, especially when I install something and I don't know the gritty details. I want it to be discovered for me. I want to be able to say, like, okay, discover these families of metadata for my container. Make sure that I make an artifact for them. I don't want to go like shelling into the container and poking around and being like, which one was this? I actually had to do that for some of my lamps images, and it was arduous and annoying and absolutely no way. Okay, sorry,
But
it
would be for part of your CI pipeline, though. It wouldn't be for every single individual build. You would design your makefile, design your GitHub Actions, whatever it is you're using to build your images. You would
but it's still manual work that you have to do. And then when you add a new container, you add a new pipeline, like, I mean, it's fine if you maintain like 2 pipelines and like that's your life, like your 2 pipelines. But if you build, I don't know, I don't even know how many containers I have, easily hundreds, thousands, like there's no way I want to do that manually. There at least needs to be an option for automation. That's what I think. Go ahead, Marcin.
So yeah, in our case, it can be manual as well, because over CI/CD pipeline and build process, some aspects of requirements you cannot discover itself. You might have a container that you build on some host, and that host can have disabled SRIOV, for example. And for build process, that's completely fine. And later you expect that this image will work with SRIOV on specific hosts. So still manual stuff is kind of required from our own side. And we kind of plan to release something like Dockerfile, but for compatibility in our case, for opinionated by tool. So you would have compat file where you specify media type and copy JSON files with basically NFD labels or something like that. But yeah, my point is what I wanted to say, that not everything can be discovered automatically.
But I also think we shouldn't throw in the towel and be like, nope, we'll just have people apply selectors like they do in Kubernetes, always manually. I think that's a really low bar, and I think at least I would like to try for better than that. I mean, I think that will be a case that will happen sometimes. I agree, but I'm hoping there will be better than that.
I was first, so I'll go first. Alexander was from Intel was mentioning some kind of generation of pod spec or doc and compose files from some spec that they would like to work on. So this, what you said, Vanessa, is kind of, at least to me, resonating with their idea. And I also thought that at least for the tool we plan to implement, we also want to generate pod spec out of compatibility metadata. That's all what I wanted to say.
I was just going to say, even if it is manual, it's not stopping someone from making an automatic process for their own images. So us saying that we think there needs to be a way to do it manually. Doesn't mean that you can't go off Nessa and implement your automatic script that has some detection for something that you know from your images that we might not be able to automate globally.
So I didn't raise my hand, but I will continue. So if I understand you, Brandon, correctly, speaking of artifact type and media types, so it would be okay to define that we have artifact type under OCI, which is very specific, like this is artifact compatibility, a small description, and media type should be defined under NFD, because I wonder about scenario like that. I go as a new developer, I would like to build my own tool for compatibility. I see under OCI, okay, this is the artifact type that is well recognized type under containers ecosystem. And I would like to see what kind of media types are there that can be placed inside the artifact. So if we place this NFD media type on NFD side, I have to go there and find, okay, this is in their place. However, if we have some kind of index under OCI that with supported media types, it's a little bit different story for users how they find out about this. So I'm not sure what's the best solution in here.
So the artifact type is a media type. It's an IANA media type. And usually we would have that registered by the group unless it was something that OCI was defining the schema of directly. And so I think it makes sense for something like NFT for them to define the schema of whatever they want to have in there, and then they can own that media type. So probably something vendor, CNCF, yada, yada.
Okay, that way. Fine. And in that case, that would be a matter of referencing, mentioning, because I want people to be aware that there are compatibility tools under OCI. I mean, not under OCI, but there is some tools that solve this compatibility stuff. So for me, it looks like we have to talk to NFT about bringing some schema, because right now they don't have any schema from this what I saw about the attributes. And I would continue the discussion about proposal A and proposal E. So for that, yeah, I mean, basically my opinion is that I would go with both proposals, that we can annotate container runtimes, and on proposal E, we extend this platform features and finally use it.
I thought at the beginning you were saying we would have still an artifact. You're saying like to drop a compatibility artifact and just kind of say you can use a generic artifact with some structure that you define. I thought that we would still be trying to define the structure of the artifact and do something like A or D, or sorry, A or E.
But yeah, because how we would define the structure for me, if we, for example, the structure of the artifact is that you have this compatibility something artifact type, which is a media type or something like that, and under as blobs are attached, you put specific media types. So I'm not sure what we can do more in there, because you would have just basically empty artifact and you put your own defined media type. If it's NFD, if it's Docker Compose stuff, maybe not Docker Compose, but Docker, something that Docker supports for node feature discovery or whatever. To make it more clear, let me open the proposal where I define the artifact itself.
I think our chances of Docker doing anything special for like swarm mode are completely gone. And so everything just gets scheduled on the local machine.
Okay.
But we'd still have to define the structure of the JSON inside of the artifact, right? Or you're saying we wouldn't do that?
Yeah, I said we wouldn't do that. Basically, on NFD side, if we come up with the schema and they define media type NFD, we put like some values possible out of the schema. So I send a link. If you look at this artifact manifest I brought in the past, in the layers media type, we had OCI image compatibility spec v1 JSON. So I'm saying right now, you would have media type maybe application CNCF, NFD image compatibility or whatever. I don't know the name right now, but inside you would find some NFD basically labels or whatever values come up from.
So they would define their own JSON blob structure. And so every community would define their own JSON blob structure.
Yeah, and they would have to register their own media type.
I mean, wasn't the point that the compatibility working group was going to come up with a standard way to define that? Because what if all of a sudden now two different communities want to take advantage of one another's annotations? Now they have different formats, they have different tools. Like we're just basically not doing the work and we're offloading it to them because we're like, this is too complicated. We're just going to add annotations to some object that already exists and say, that's your problem.
Yes, you are basically doing that. That's of delegating this work to other groups, because even if we come up with general spec, it's still not usable for them. Because the spec is not understandable by Kubernetes. You still have to have some kind of converter and matchers that will do that stuff. And you would have to do the same for Docker and other things. My plan was basically to talk to NFD guys and do the same stuff as people do with API machinery, which is not Kubernetes centric. That you can run NFD on Docker and so on, and eventually make it a kind of global solution for everybody. But this is long-term.
But I still think it was our job though to come up with the structure for the metadata. The tools are out of scope. I totally agree. The converters, the plugins, whatever, out of scope. But the structure of the metadata in that artifact can be really simple. And I think we would be better if we had a consistent format that these communities are using to build their custom tools. To just say like, yeah, you could do that right now because you have OCI registry as store. You have ORS. I can push any JSON blob that I want to a registry and already do that. And it's very I should be able to use other communities' compatibility artifacts that they design. And I should be able to predict that basic structure. It could be really stupid. It could just be like the key value pairs, but I think we don't want to have all of these things emerge and just be different, because I don't think that's helping anyone. And I think we can come up with something simple enough that allows people to define basically what they're going to define, which are the attributes, the metadata labels.
Okay, so my assumption was that it's gonna be always a key value pair. I mean, if you're coming from this angle, I agree we can come up how you should basically build this artifact, what kind of specification it should be. And key value pairs, as you propose for in your proposal D, that we have a very simple, key value pairs for compatibility is fine by me. If this is how it works, it's okay.
Yeah, I think we should get at least some guidance, and it could be just key value pairs. I think the key value pairs would accomplish a lot, because the structure we were playing around with had like another level where, for example, you define a group. And arguably, if you, for example, NFD has different kinds of extractors. So let's say that you very quickly wanted to find the kernel config. That would just be one index, and then you'd have a small number of annotations to look for. On the other hand, if you already know the exact label that you're looking for, then it's just O of 1, and then you just look it up. So I guess it comes down to the use case of, whether using these metadata attributes is going to be sort of like a search, like I will need to actually look across all of them in the list, in which case you have to consider the length of the list, or if it's going to be more of like a, look up one thing, get one thing out of a set kind of thing. And I think it actually would help to talk to, if we consider NFD to be like the entry point to what the Kubernetes community is going to need for scheduling, I think we should talk to them like specifically and say like, okay, forget about plugins and tools. What labels do you need to make the best scheduling decisions? And like how do you find them? So because if it's the case where it's just matching one label, then we could do the flat approach. But if it's the case that you need a little more, I don't know, you need to have a more efficient search strategy, we may not want that. Go ahead, Brandon.
I think right now we've got an ecosystem of nobody doing this. I mean, besides individuals on things, but not major projects doing it. And so having a project implement it and then having another project look at it and decide, okay, we can make some mappings off that and make it work. And then maybe at some point you eventually get to two projects saying, no, we can't work off of their stuff. We need to make our own thing. I think you start to get into the scenario we need to make a standard once you get to the point that you have two competing implementations that both need the data. But until we get to that point, I feel like I worry we're doing a little premature optimization where you ask the groups, what do you need? And they don't even know because they haven't even written it first. They've never designed this yet, and so they don't even know what they need.
That's a little backwards comment though, because like, sorry, I shouldn't say something direct about your comment. That feels backwards to me because like the whole purpose of the compatibility group is that we're trying to kind of do that. We're doing exactly that. We're addressing a problem that people don't know the solution for yet. Like it almost goes without saying. And so it seems like I don't know. It seems like a way out to list that as the reason that, oh, we can't even suggest the design. I would say that maybe we come up with the hardened, let's add more annotations to our image manifest, and that's like what our compatibility groups comes up with. I don't love that solution. It doesn't let me do anything. But then we come up with this external artifact, and it's sort of like a beta level. I don't know, like it doesn't have to be like this is the final thing. It would be more of a suggestion, like this is what we're suggesting to the community to use. We're going to be moving forward, talking with NFT communities, talking with HPC communities, and building things around it. And then, because it's beta, there could be a point in the future when we come back and more of these communities have established ideas and tooling, whatever, then we kind of harden it up a little bit into something that's more like a spec. We're providing this original structure of guidance to give you exactly that guidance to be able to do that. And that's a very different message than like, you can make an artifact and put JSON blobs in it and put it on the internet. And everyone's like, I still don't know what to do. And like that's why the compatibility working group is, because we want to start off that discussion. We want to give the guidance. So I think it's important that we do something, even if it's not the hardened final thing. And even if it anticipates that, yes, the world is going to change and the way this artifact is designed is also going to change.
I'm trying to balance between, yeah, we definitely want to create new things and design solutions and put them out there for people, with at the same time knowing that so much of OCI has always been on implement it first, and then once you see something that kind of works, come to us, and then we'll turn it into a standard.
So arguably, why isn't that the same for compatibility then? Why are we here having this discussion? Because I don't see anything out there where someone implemented something for compatibility and then they came to us, we're turning the standard. No, it's exactly the opposite way around. So are we done? Should we just stop right now? Like,
no, that's why I say I'm trying to find the balance between the two, because we absolutely do want to design new things, implement new things, but I know the pressure we get back from doing stuff, even when we got the artifact and refer stuff from the community. There was a drive for it just because we had a couple competing implementations out there already. There was an implementation for notation that they were working on. There was an implementation out there already for cosine where they were doing some of their stuff. And so we had some stuff that we could leverage. And so that helped us design what we were implementing. But at the same time, there's always this pushback within OCI of implement it first, come up with your own solution, and then come to us once we figure out that we need to start standardizing and not having multiple implementations. And I'm always trying to walk that fine line of where do we find that balance? Because there is a lot of value to having OCI define the standards at some point there.
Yeah, go ahead, Dirk or Marcin.
Marcin was first.
So yeah, I understand both concerns, to be honest. And my first idea with this artifact and media type was just because we don't have to specify something that is final, right? If we start with NFD, and if you have media type NFD, you expect basically their NFD key value pairs. This is what I meant, basically, that we don't come up with any new specification or something like that. But if you have an artifact and multiple blobs with media type NFD, you can expect their key value pairs from NFD. That's what I thought about that we basically don't have to come up with any new specification or something like that. It's just based on media type, you expect a specific format. In that case of NFD, that would be this key value part, right? And because if you look at Kubernetes and or other orchestrators, I didn't find much more projects like that. So I thought that, as I mentioned, we can talk to API to those guys, and I hoped we could make it globally, that you can deploy NFD for Docker or other projects as well that is working as API machinery. It's a long-term goal, but since we have already something there that works fine, they came up with so many things in there to detect stuff. Why not to use it like and invest more into that? That's all what I wanted to say. If it's understandable, if it's not, I can elaborate.
So for me, it's clear, but I wanted to come back to the previous discussion of when should there be a standard. So I think other standardization bodies have solved this problem, right? So they announced this is a draft, and it's only a standard once there's an implementation or once there's a sufficient implementation of it. And I think we could do the same here, right? So we could start with a draft that is simple enough, extensible enough, and give people this as a starting point to implement. And when we get feedback, because people start implementing and they find it inadequate or not covering all the use cases, it can be extended without having to roll back a previously issued OCI standard.
Some of that might just be, it's still in the working group, it hadn't been merged yet kind of solution where we're looking for people to implement it to take it out of the working group.
Marcin, for telco, are you? I mean, you don't have to tell me like company secrets or whatever, but you're going to be using Kubernetes too, or?
Yes, Kubernetes too.
Okay, I mean, so you're interested in like the NFD use case.
Yeah, but it's not only Kubernetes; it's also OpenStack. At some point,
okay,
Swarm
okay,
as well.
OpenStack too. So maybe. I mean, I like the idea of kind of keeping it as a draft, something that's still not kind of published, I guess, by the working group. What if we sort of got out the simple version, so A or E, and then we kept working on the NFD specific use case for Kubernetes et al.
Yeah, sorry.
Because I'm invested in that too, and I think I think the HPC use cases would bubble into that. Tell us all your secrets. Brandon wants to know all your secrets. The plant knows all the secrets. That's who you got to talk to. Just like call Marcin out of the room and talk to his plant.
Since I'm working on open source, I don't know all secrets, but if I would say any secrets, they would probably kill me or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I agree. Let's do it that way. I mean, because how the reality would look like in that case. Basically, we come up with this A and D, E, and we have to agree on some how this artifact should look like, because Johannes and me, we were gonna implement probably different tools because we have so much different use cases. So we just agree on the artifact how it should look like, and then we provide our own implementations and see where we do go from there. However, our common ground is NFD, so it makes sense that we think, what do we expect from NFD guys? What is the artifact? How the artifact should look like? And basically, try to maybe join the NFD meetings and talk.
Yeah, I would really enjoy just talking to them about. I think once we figure out that workflow, it'll be easier to work backwards to the artifact. Cool.
And I spoke to them at KubeCon. They opened this pull request and they said this is the way they want to move NFD to separate Go mode. That other projects.
Oh, they're gonna move forward to that.
Yeah, they will move there because this is not the first. This is not the first request they received. other organizations also try to use NFD API. So that's why I'm hoping that eventually they will also move to OpenStack or Docker and so on. That we have one unified way. Okay, then. I need some time to gather my thoughts on this artifact, how it should look like, or if what's the next steps and so on. So I'm not sure if you have any other topic in that case, or do you want to talk still about this artifact draft, how it should look like, or do you want to think of that over a couple of days? What's your opinion?
So just to step back, we're going to focus on getting out A or B. And do we want to kind of redo a new proposal for just a simple artifact, which is going to be like key value pairs and a JSON dump?
Yeah. Still makes sense to keep this as a separate proposal. Even
Yeah.
I'm gonna release that as well. So even if we have very similar proposals, still do it, Vanessa, as as your own proposal, because then we will see our way of thinking. So where is the difference? So let's create 2 new proposals about using artifact, which is very simple, and let's see where do we go from there. That we find a common ground between my way of thinking and your way of thinking, and others as well.
Okay, let me let's see. Let me copy that. So it should be based off of the link you sent from B for the artifact manifest, right? And so there'd be this media type, but then it would still, I guess my question is, given that we have a common format, do we need the different media types, or would it be just the compatibility?
Because I would keep it as a layers. We have a different media type, because even if we have some, my point is we can add internal media types based on the tool and opinionated implementations. So I would still keep a specific media type for NFD or so. If it's clear what I meant by that.
Okay. So do I need to make a new proposal, or should I just take mine and remove the plugin, just kind of cut it down a little bit?
I would create new proposals completely just to keep the history there, like how we get there, So it would be good to keep B and D even if we don't follow those ideas.
Okay, so I will make a new proposal based off of my current one
Mhm.
that like gives it a haircut, cuts out all of the plugin stuff.
Mhm.
I'll probably remove the schemas reference because arguably a schema could just be an annotation.
Yeah.
Not sure if I'll keep the nesting or not, but okay, yeah, I can do that.
Okay, great.
Propose all the things. Yeah, I love that meme. I actually have the book from, I forget what it's called, but it's really funny. It also has I love this a lot, like the big hairy monster. Yeah, anyway. Yeah. Off topic.
Cool. So it feels like we are moving forward with all of this stuff. After at least I had some feelings that we have not so much progress because we were so in different use cases and so on. So it's good to see some progress. Okay, so I have no topic anymore. So if anybody wants to say something, or feel free.
If nothing else, it's good to hear feedback from people outside of our little circle. And so getting that from KubeCon is very nice. And thank
Yeah, I
you for
enjoyed
running those
watching that.
discussions, Marcin.
I didn't know that I could have attended virtually though, although it would it have been like in the wee hours of the morning? Like what time was it for you, Brandon?
It was 9 this time, East Coast. So it was
Okay,
doable,
that's not too
but
bad actually. That's the goblin hour. I'm awake during the goblin hour. Maybe not, maybe that's still too early
Yeah.
for goblin hour, but anyway, next time maybe we can better advertise that I just thought it was an in-person meeting, so I didn't come.
It was advertised a little bit on Slack, mostly in the general meetup. So yeah, we should go around to the working groups
okay.
and make sure they know as well. That's on me. I'll take that going forward.
Alrighty, I think we're good for this. Oh, Victor, your hand's up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been following this as a trying to understand a little bit, but still still not. But one thing I watched on the YouTube for the Intel's DRA. Well, I just wonder what is the relationship between that and this standardization? I mean, how does it work together? I guess.
I think I can try to answer this because over DRA you just have a way how you expose devices to nodes, right? And here we share only some part of that because over compatibility specification you say what kind of devices your container requires, but you don't have any information how to expose devices into containers. That's the role of DRA. And DRA could use our compatibility, but not the other way around, if that makes sense. If anybody wants to comment on that, feel free.
Shouldn't something like node feature discovery be able to figure out if there's a device mounted based from DRA? Like, shouldn't that be eaten up by that?
Sorry, could you repeat? I couldn't hear.
Oh, sure. So shouldn't node feature discovery be able to see the device that is being exposed by DRA?
It's as far as I know, node feature discovery is still discovering some PCI devices which are available. However, with DRA, you have to implement some interfaces, how to bring those devices into pods itself, containers. So it's NFD is just about metadata. DRA is about actually implement and bring those devices to containers.
Yeah, but for our use cases of compatibility, we really just care about the metadata. So as long as the metadata says like this device was brought to this particular, yeah, probably, yeah. I think there's a way that they all come together. Although I haven't like actually tried that out myself.
There are functionality from that point of view. They are overlapping, right? About what is available on the node.
So that was a talk at KubeCon.
Yeah, is this different approach to solve the same problem, or is the DRA is more for the the resource lower layer, and this effort is on the upper layer, on the software tier?
Yeah, basically, as you said, you can say something like that. Compatibility is about metadata that container requires. DRA is about not only what is where, but how to bring devices into containers. It's just I'm talking about some kubelet interface that allows you to talk to those devices that you bring, for example, GPU or other stuff, and advertise what kind of resources you have available on the cluster. And compatibility is not only about the devices itself, it's also about kernel aspects and OS configuration itself.
Okay, so it need both to work for.
Well, you don't have to have both to work. You can use DRA today without compatibility, but if you have compatibility metadata on the container side, you can better make some better predictions about your cluster. For example, if you specify requirements on the container side about I don't know what kind of GPU you require, you can feed your cluster or nodes with this information and make better scheduling decisions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
thanks.
I see them as complementary. Arguably, if so I'm not familiar with Intel's DRA. I haven't tried it. But arguably, if that is able to expose what kind of, I don't know, drivers it's providing in some programmatic way, annotations, labels, I guess that's the world we live in Kubernetes, then that can be discovered by something like node feature discovery. And then that trickles back up to compatibility. So I think it's just different sources of information that ultimately provide a better view of what environment you're scheduling to or what our particular needs. And I see them as complementary.
Yeah, I agree with that. So
yeah, I need to watch all the talks. I saw someone posted that they're online already. I'm really excited.
But I think Victor Patrick will join maybe the next time. He's from Intel and he can explain that much better. And also I heard opinion that DRA folks have a problem with scheduling, that you can end up with pods that are scheduled to nodes where the device is not available. But that was just something I heard, and I'm
Oh,
not.
because there's only one device and then there's more than one pod or something. Like with Amazon with the elastic fiber adapter, I think you can just bind it to one, but you'll get an error, like it won't work. It won't just like bind and be like, oh, there's a device here. No, there's not. Yeah, I can totally see how that would happen.
Yeah, so it was coming up with some maybe problem how to about exposing the devices on the node. I don't know. I'm not sure about the issue there. I just heard this opinion and I don't know details about that. So I thought to also reach to DRA folks to ask about this, because as Vanessa said, that the thing we are working on, probably they could use as well. Anyway, Victor, please join the next meeting and we can ask and clarify this with Patrick better.
Thanks.
Okay, so
talking about the next meeting is in 2 weeks. Is that correct?
The other week, another week. However, I won't be able I won't be able to join the next meeting, the next Monday. So which gonna be?
So we're skipping next Monday?
It's up to you. If you want that, I mean, you can.
It is Easter Monday, so some people have it off.
Oh, I was like,
okay.
what holiday do we have? What holiday conference? Okay.
It's also April Fool's Day, so a lot of people just avoid everyone that day.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should probably just skip it. I think it's good if you're here, Marcin. We're gonna be useless without you, so.
I don't believe that. So yeah, let's skip the next meeting and let's talk in 2 weeks. I will post this on channel as well.
Okay, sounds good. I will get my new slim down proposal up too.
Cool.
Okay. Have a great week, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.